Okay,
Huh.
so tell us about,
Construction loans.
right.
Yes. Okay. So yeah. So if you're, what Michelle is referring to is when purchasing a property that, needs maybe needs some rehabilitation, right? Or maybe it doesn't need rehabilitation, but it's, you can't find what exactly you're looking for. And so therefore you buy a home, but you want to also, do a renovation. And renovation can be as little as, well, cost wise, maybe as little as, 25, 30, $40,000, and as much as, into the millions. So there is, there are lenders, Citizens is one of them, that offers the ability to be able to do both things and to do them simultaneously. So you can identify a property as well as apply for and to get funds to do the renovation. And when you think about like some of the how that differs from a regular mortgage, or when you identify regular property, it was that you would say, okay, here I found a home and it's $500,000, and I need to do about $200,000 worth of renovation cost. And let's say you were going to put 20% down with what you were buying. Instead of putting 20% of 500,000 down, right, which is the price of the home, you would put 20% of 700,000, right? So it's the cost, the total, what we refer to as the total acquisition cost, right? The cost of the property plus the cost of the renovation, and then you figure out your down payment from there. One of the important particulars here, though, is that we will appraise the property. When we do the appraisal, we're not appraising the property as is. We're going to appraise it subject to what this renovation is going to be. So in order for that to happen, and here's where it gets a little bit tricky and sticky sometimes, and where sometimes it will, people the deal falls apart, is in order for the appraiser to appraise that property subject to renovation, the appraiser needs to know what the renovation is going to look like. Well, how does the appraiser know that? Well, by looking at architectural plans or drawings, specs, a contract with a GC that's outlining the scope of the work to be done. You have to have these things in order to be able to do the appraisal. So if you identify a home and it needs some renovation, you have to very quickly be able to identify a builder or a contractor. And, in many cases, when you're doing a much larger renovation, you might need an architect. So sometimes timing is the number one killer, when somebody's trying to do a purchase plus construction loan at the same time.
It's also organization. I mean, a lot of my clients, I can remember one client. Do you hear us, Maria?
Yes, but can you move it? You're a little bit out of frame. There we go.
Okay, and we'll move it. Okay, so I think I with clients of mine who've done construction loans, I think the ones that have really succeeded is somebody who I can extremely organized. She has her contractor in place, to do exactly the renovation, all the parts lined up for her to be able to arrange a construction loan, have the pick out all the specs of the house, pick out all the the kitchen, everything pertaining to the
Right.
renovation. Everything was very well organized. I think for a person who changes their mind often, who cannot make a decision easily, I don't think it's something that would really work for them. In all
No.
honesty, so I think that that's something to take into consideration if you're thinking of taking a construction loan.
I think the other potential way to do something like this is, and this only works if the home that you're buying is in decent shape, or what I call financeable shape, right? If the property that you're buying is livable, habitable, then you can, get a loan to buy the property. Just get a traditional mortgage to buy the property, and then come back afterwards, after you've already owned the home, to do the construction loan. Now you want to get pre-approved up front for both to make sure that like you buy it and you're still going to qualify for the construction loan later. But when you do it that way, right? When you buy the home first, then it gives you more time to make those decisions, especially like if you're going to need to get an architect involved. My experience has been that when somebody contacts me for a construction loan, I mean, typically, I would say on average, we don't go to application for a minimum of 4 to 6 months. It takes that long to, oftentimes too, depending on where the home is located, you might have to turn the plans in to an architectural review board or an HOA or a landmarks, et cetera.
Okay, it's interesting.
The other thing I
We'll
to
move it
make,
over.
maybe that another area is doing a 203K, which
Right.
is sort of like almost like a fixer-up type loan. So
Yes. Mhm.
care is about, so if you're buying something that sort of needs a lot of renovation, that it's a different kind of loan where you can get a loan. They don't care about COs. They don't care about open permits. They don't care about really any of that because they know you're going to fix
Right.
the shell of the
Right.
house and you're going to renovate it. And the bank's still in charge of like the different sectors, a certain work are being done, and then they come out and do an inspection. So that's another way of doing a
It
loan.
is. Like a 203K loan is part of the FHA program, right? So there are some specific requirements for that, like namely, they may need to be a first-time home buyer. It definitely has to be a primary residence, can't be a second home or an investment property. And also, there are loan limits on the 203K loan. So just be sure to, again, get pre-approved. If that's something that you're looking to do, make sure that you can get it approved for that type of loan. But that's another great product in the construction space.
Just being it's often you see on a listing, it says either a cash or a construction loan. You cannot take a regular mortgage, and that's typically when the house has holes all over it, when you have holes all over the house and in the ceiling and the wall, and when things are open and there's a lot of damage done to the house won't lend, the bank won't
Yeah.
lend something like that. We've had to have houses
Yeah.
repaired either by the seller or even the buyer at times to
Yeah.
lender to approve the loan. So it's interesting.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. That's when it might have to be done as a purchase transaction, right? And you're right. When you see that sort of listing, that's typically a good indication that you're not going to be able to get a traditional type of mortgage on that home.
Correct. How long does the construction loans take if somebody applies for it with as a regular?
Yeah, that's a great point. They definitely take, with a traditional mortgage, you can literally close in 30 days or less if you needed to. But on a construction loan, because there's more underwriting that's going on. It's not just your credit, it's also like what you're doing with the construction and all of those, a whole other set of documents that need to be reviewed. So we say it's a minimum of 45 to 60 days that you need to allow from start to finish, right? And that means like, where we have you have your plans, you have your contract with the builder. From that day is when that clock starts. So definitely allow some time for that.
So, people choose different contractors. I think they have to make sure that their contractor is bonded, is insured, has all their paperwork in order, because often people hire people and they're not licensed, unfortunately. So I think
Yeah.
very
So
specific.
that's another good point. I mean, I will tell you that like on our bank and in our bank, the we look at their license and that they have the correct liability insurance. But that's pretty much the extent of what the due diligence that the bank does. And part of that is that we don't want to do much more diligence than that, because if something does go wrong with the builder, the bank doesn't want to be liable, like, oh, you did all of, you vetted the builder. Like, no, we didn't vet the builder. But we do, they definitely have to be licensed. If it's in a state where a license is required, there actually are states where you do not need to be licensed. And they have to have the correct general liability insurance.
So, anything else you want to chime in with, Maria? I basically said everything.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I
Right.
don't see from my point of view, you know, the same process applies usually. I mean, except that it takes longer from a contractual point.
Right.
If I'm doing a contingency for a construction loan, you got to be very specific on the contract.
Yeah.
You know, and that's a different process, and it takes a lot longer. And then you have to, you know, so it's you probably have to factor that into your contract negotiation. But
Right.
want to know about that, you know,
Right.
I mean, most of the time people are waiving contingencies, so it's hard
Right.
to get a construction contract contingency. So we don't see that often.
Right. Right.
But the process typically is the same once we get to the table, except there's different paperwork obviously involved. And then, you know, post closing is the issue when you have to have the schedule where you have to schedule when each set of work gets
Will be
done.
done.
So
Yes.
several inspections have to happen post closing, which, you know, at that point I'm not involved anymore. But
Right, right, right. But there is a lot more that's involved, right? Like a title company is involved, and we're in a state where a title rundown is required after, with every draw request, to ensure that no mechanics liens have been placed on the property by any subcontractors and things of that nature. So, look, it's definitely more detailed. But I would also say this. I think I mentioned it to Michelle when we were chatting earlier this week. It's, I see it being more and more common. Like, I definitely have more construction loans applications than ever. And I do think that it's, indicative of either people not being able to find what they're looking for, right? New homes that they're looking for, and they're willing. I've had many clients that really didn't want to do a construction loan, but they also really needed to find a place that was going to suit their needs. So it's definitely a good thing to know exists as you're out there in the market looking around.
absolutely, right? Yep.
Well,
It's good.
All
It's good.
right.
And
Yeah.
a lot of people don't know about it. So.
And it opens
And the
people
one thing
up.
I will
Yeah.
say is Citizens is one of the few that do it.
Right.
There are very few banks that do it. So, that's great that you guys do that.
That you do it, and
Yeah.
you're so. That's
Mhm.
so. Having said all this, so we want to wish everybody a nice weekend, and we will see you next Thursday or Friday on Instagram Live. Have a great week,
Have a
guys.
nice week. Have a nice
Thank
weekend.
you. Have a great weekend. Bye, guys.